I'm not fighting no more. Kelly, let me do my job. I just told you I didn't want to do no interviews, and you said you are going to do interviews. Now you told me to do interviews. Now you're trying to take me away from them. No. Let me show Dante's Boxing Nation some love.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Eddie Hearn just revealed that he just offered Jermall Charlo a, quote, massive deal, a one-fight deal to fight against Demetrius Andrade in a unification bout. For those of you guys who don't know, Jermall Charlo was Canelo Alvarez's mandatory, and instead of Canelo Alvarez defending his belt, he surrendered his belt to Jermall Charlo. So now Canelo is not a champion anymore, not a WBC champion, and now Jermall Charlo is the WBC champion. And Demetrius Andrade is the WBO champion. So considering the fact that these two fighters are the most avoided fighters in the division, it makes sense for them to fight against each other. Because once again, it's going to put much more pressure on Canelo Alvarez to step up and fight against the winner. He will have no excuse to not take the fight. So once again, Eddie Hearn and Demetrius Andrade, they're doing their part. They've already offered Charlo a huge deal, a huge one-fight deal. Eddie even said, hey, if you beat Demetrius Andrade, then you'll have the option to fight against Canelo Alvarez. But we know there's no guarantee Canelo Alvarez will take that fight, because right now, Canelo is doing everything he can do to avoid the two most dangerous fighters in his division. You know, Eddie Hearn, he made a good point in this interview. He said a lot of the PBC fighters, they're not contractually locked in to only fight for PBC. A lot of them are just advised by Al Haymon, but have the option to branch out and fight for DAZN or any other network. And Mikey Garcia is proof of that, because he just signed a one-fight deal with DAZN to fight Jesse Vargas. And according to reports, it's a $7 million deal. So if he got a deal like that, you can only imagine the type of deal that Eddie offered Jermall Charlo. Matter of fact, since it was so much telling stuff that Eddie Hearn said in this interview, I want to go ahead and quote him. Eddie said, "I can't at the moment deliver the mega fight to Andrade that he needs. I've tried. The guys are not queuing up to fight him. It's kind of like Charlo and Andrade need each other. Charlo has got no one to fight, and no one really wants to fight Andrade. So you have to give Charlo all the money to say, come fight with us." Because really, Andrade is going to miss the boat in terms of his prime to have these kind of fights. Demetrius does need that marquee fight, and it's not for lack of trying. Guys, that was really telling what Eddie Hearn said right there, because he just admitted that he's been trying to get Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez to fight the likes of Demetrius Andrade, and they are refusing to get in the ring with these monsters. And once again, fans, understand something. When I call Andrade a monster, when I call Charlo a monster, it's fighters like Canelo and Andrade, or Canelo and Golovkin, that make them look like monsters, because they won't get in the ring with them. If Canelo will get in the ring with Liam Smith, he'll get in the ring with James Kirkland, he'll get in the ring with Rocky Fielding, he'll get in the ring with Matthew Hatton, but he won't get in the ring with Demetrius Andrade. And this is after Canelo already said that he wanted to unify all of the belts. On top of that, even Canelo's own promoter is saying he has to fight Charlo and Demetrius Andrade to be great. And notice, Oscar De La Hoya didn't say Canelo needs to fight Rocky Fielding to be great. He didn't say he needs to fight Kovalev to be great. He didn't say, especially not a Kovalev who is at the end of his career and has already been knocked out twice. Man, it's just so ironic when you think of the excuses that the fans will make to defend a fighter for avoiding someone. I mean, when it comes to Gennady Golovkin, Charlo was Golovkin's mandatory for about 2 years. Golovkin ducked him. Now, Golovkin just recently won a vacant title, the IBF strap, and he's already planning on fighting his new mandatory, which is a guy that no one has heard of with like 5 knockouts or something like that. But when Golovkin or Canelo make moves like this, you're not going to hear the fans say, oh, Golovkin's opponent is a bum. Who did he fight? He doesn't deserve to fight Golovkin. Or who did Rocky Fielding beat? He doesn't deserve to fight Canelo. They're not going to say that because they know that these opponents are guaranteed wins for Canelo and Gennady Golovkin. Now, when it becomes a threat, a dangerous threat who might actually beat Canelo or Golovkin, that's when all of a sudden the fans, they want to talk about the fighter's resume, if he deserves to get in the ring with Canelo. It works both ways. If you're going to say the black fighters don't deserve to get in the ring, you have to say the non-black fighters don't deserve to get in the ring as well. And you have to criticize Canelo Alvarez for fighting someone who doesn't deserve to be in the ring with him, according to your own logic. Now, going back to what Eddie Hearn said, something else that stood out is when he said, we have to give Jermall Charlo all the money to say, come fight us. Eddie Hearn is laying it out there. He's basically revealing that they gave Jermall Charlo everything that he would want. Whatever it would take to entice Charlo, that was the type of offer they made to Jermall Charlo. So once again, if Golovkin and Canelo are going to continue to avoid the two most dangerous fighters in the division, then it makes all the sense for Jermall Charlo and Andrade to fight against each other. I agree with Eddie Hearn. He said that they need each other. It's like they really need each other, and they do. I mean, if you really think about it, it's kind of like all these fighters are in a tournament, right? You have Gennady Golovkin, Canelo, Andrade, Charlo, Billy Joe Saunders. And then you have fighters like Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. They're like, well, if I'm going to have to fight against Demetrius, Andrade, or Charlo, I'd rather just opt out of the tournament. And this is pretty much what Golovkin and Canelo have done. So now you still have Andrade and Charlo that are still in the tournament. And if they fight against each other, that's for the gold medal, which means whoever wins that fight is hands down the best middleweight in the world. I mean, when you're in the Olympics, you have to fight the guy that's in your bracket, right? It doesn't matter who he is, what country he comes from, how many fans he has, or who he's fought before. You can't say, well, I don't want to fight this guy. Who has he fought? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But while I'm using that example, I want to once again make it clear, it's not even Canelo Alvarez that are making these excuses. It's Canelo fans that are making excuses that Canelo himself is not even making, which really tells you where the fans are coming from. They're not trying to make any logical sense. They're not trying to quote anything Canelo said. They're just trying to do whatever they can do to save face for Canelo Alvarez. But you're not being truthful if you're not quoting the man himself, or at least not being truthful with yourself. So look, guys, at the end of the day, the ball right now is in Jermall's court. He needs to take this Demetrius Andrade fight because he's not going to get the Canelo Alvarez fight. Andrade's not going to get the Canelo or Golovkin fight. The only way they can force these guys to either get in the ring with them or duck them again and be under tremendous pressure and receive some serious backlash, because then it would be extremely difficult for Canelo or Golovkin to justify not fighting them then. Now, a couple videos ago, I also talked about this where I said I thought it was really imperative that Jermall Charlo step up and take this Demetrius Andrade fight right now, and because that will once again put the pressure on a Canelo or even a Gennady Golovkin. And I heard some Canelo fans, or I seen some Canelo Alvarez fans in the comment section saying, yeah, that's what Canelo's been waiting for. That's all Canelo is waiting for. We know that's not true, because when Canelo was at 154 and Jermall Charlo was the champion, Jermall Charlo had just knocked out the undefeated Julian J. Rock Williams, one of the most dangerous contenders in the division. He knocked him out, and now we see J. Rock has bounced back and he's the champion at 154 again. But anyway, Jermall Charlo, he knocked out Julian J. Rock Williams. So if you thought that Canelo Alvarez was waiting for Jermall Charlo to beat a certain type of opponent or whatever, that would have been his perfect opportunity to say, I want the winner of Charlo versus J. Rock Williams. Instead, you know what Canelo did at 154? And first, let me add this. While all of this was going on, once again, Andrade was the champion too. he was calling Canelo Alvarez a bitch and calling him out. So while Charlo was knocking out J-Rock and Andrade was the champion calling Canelo Alvarez a bitch, you know what Canelo decides to do? He waits until Andrade gets stripped, and then he fights Liam Smith for the same belt that Andrade was holding just a month prior. So even when Jermall Charlo got in the ring with a Demetrius Andrade type of opponent, Canelo still didn't step up. This proves that this had nothing to do with Canelo not approving the level of opposition that Andrade or Charlo have been in the ring with. Because if that were the case, Canelo Alvarez would have never got in the ring with at least 85 to 90% of the opponents that he's been in the ring with. I'll close out with saying this. This is a modern day Black Murderers Row. For those of you guys that have never heard of the Black Murderers Row, this is not something that I made up. If you Google the Black Murderers Row, you'll find out that this was a group of the most dangerous, skillful black fighters in the 1940s and 50s that every big name fighter was avoiding. And when I say fighters avoiding them, I'm talking about fighters like Sugar Ray Robinson, Henry Armstrong, Jake LaMotta, and any other big name you can think of. All of those fighters, all of those great fighters, avoided the Black Murderers Row, which was about a group of 8 black fighters. And because these guys could not get the big names in the ring, they had to round up a tournament and fight against each other. But the problem was they had to keep fighting against each other over and over and over again, never landing the marquee fight. And I think that's the only difference from back then and now. I truly believe that with this Black Murderers Row, once Andrade and Charlo fight, the winner of that fight is going to undeniably be the best middleweight in the world, and it's going to put a lot of pressure once again on a Canelo Alvarez or even a Golovkin to get in the ring and fight for that title of best middleweight in the world. Let's see if Jermall Charlo actually signs the contract and takes this fight. And also shout out to Looney Tune Boxing for providing the artwork you guys are looking at right now on the screen. Go ahead and show them some support and go ahead and follow them on Instagram at Looney Tune Boxing. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.